tell us that American culture is the fastest changing culture in the history of humankind. That is, more change occurs in our culture than in any other culture currently existing or previously existing. With that in mind, it's not so much a surprise that Janny Boonie Brizius began a camping program in 1955. What is a surprise is that today, in 1990, the camp still exists. In 1955, just to give a brief overview, the civil rights movement didn't exist very much anyways, very small. In 1955, it's ironic I'm talking about Kuwait tonight, a country we didn't know much about. Also in 1955, we had never really heard of a country called Vietnam. In 1955, Dwight Eisenhower was president of the United States. In 1955, we had not even put a man in space, let alone thought about putting a man on the moon. Also in 1955, Janny Boonie Brizius, in planning with Reverend Selby, former minister of the Janny Community Church, put together a camping program that would hold its first session in the summer of 1956. For the next hour, we will be talking to them about some of their goals, objectives, thoughts about the development of the camp, and future directions of the camp. Okay, we will begin with questions I have put together, but then again, as I said earlier, we will open it up to you folks. It will be a tight program, we get 1 hour, and we'll move right along. At this time, I would like to introduce Janny Boonie Brizius, and we'll move right along. Janny Boonie. Welcome to Crossfire. Camp is reaching its 5th decade. With that in mind, how would you say kids today are different than they were then, as far as challenges, problems, just general disposition?
That's a tough question. In many ways, they're no different. All right,
Here we go.
in many ways, there are no difference in kids today, the youth of America today, than there were years and years ago. And yet, there is a big difference. They all have needs. They all want to be loved. They all really are looking for some type of discipline in life, even though they don't realize that. They want to search and find answers. Help me out, Dan.
I think the kids are the same today as they always were, basically, inside. The problems that they face are very different. In 1956, they didn't have drugs to worry about. May have had a little bit of alcohol, but not to the extent that anybody was worrying about it. The divorce rate was not anything like it is now. Problems are serious now than they were frivolous by comparison.
I can recall the biggest problem we had at first, at least I thought so, because I was rather naive, was that almost 99% of our campers could not swim.
Correct.
That's right. And so offering a program to teach kids how to swim was the #1 program at camp. Now, because every community has a pool and there's a lot more recreation, it's only, out of 200 people here today, probably only 5 or 6 can't swim.
Okay, great. You'll notice I'll bounce around to different topics, so there may be some continuity in some cases and not so much continuity in others. More use of you. Thank you. There's quite a void between life at camp and life at home. And we learn lessons at camp while we're here. We learn things about ourselves, we learn things about other people. And ever since I can remember my years as a camper, as a counselor, there's always been this stress as far as how do you go through the, what I call re-entry phase into the normal world. Are there any lessons or gems that you want campers or stand staff to take with them, I mean, from their week at camp to take home with them, not only for the rest of the year, but really for the rest of their lives? Is there anything you have in mind, messages that you want us to take with us?
He asks tough questions. I started with the last one, Jan. You start this one.
Thanks a lot. So much that I don't think there's anything that we can put our finger on, one or two.
We might have this year as many as 40 or 50 different churches represented. And years ago, we realized that we could not teach doctrine. We couldn't tell a Presbyterian that they were living wrong or a Catholic boy or girl. And so we quickly changed our program from teaching doctrine just to teaching how to be good people. Indeed, if a person would come to camp and learn how to say, no thank you, please, we thought we may have something going for us. We try more than anything else to have the kids absorb from the staff what they need to do. Rather than us preach to them and tell them what they should do, they should learn if we are setting a good example. And of course, that puts us as staff on the spot. You agree, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. Let me back up. I want to still stay in that general area. 35 years ago, when you put together or started thinking about we want to do a camp, and those of you in the audience, it's hard for you and it's hard for me to think really 35 years ago. But if you can imagine, if you look at Janny Boonie, if you can imagine them 35 years ago, and as a young couple, David wasn't even born, and they had an idea to put a camp together. If you can kind of go back in time, and both of you, if you can go back in time, what were your goals? What did you have in mind?
I remember that very well, as a matter of fact. Boonie's been very active in one kind of camping, and I've been active in a different kind of camping, but neither of us have ever done any church camping. Neither. Because church camping was dull. Everybody that I knew that went to church camp went because somebody made them go. And when they were there, they had a horrible, boring time. And yes, we'd love to have a camp, but we didn't want one that was going to be boring and that, that we want to come back to. And so we tried to take the spiritual aspect that we wanted to put together for it, but incorporate in with it all the fun things that he had learned to do as a kid, and that I had learned to do as a kid, and our different kind of camping that we had done.
Basically, we took a 6-week camping program and took all the great things out of that 6 weeks program and did every single one of them in 1 week.
Okay, great. In all the years I've known you, I've never knew that. And when I was thinking of things I wanted to ask you, that was the first on my list. Those of us here, campers and staff, I think, myself, I take you for granted. I take the camp for granted. A lot of special things happen here, and I never question when I come down here on Saturday, gee, I wonder if camp will be special this year. And every once in a while, when a camper says on Tuesday, camp's different this year, I know that I'll see the same camper on Friday, and they'll be very happy with camp. doubts? Have you ever had doubts about camp? About it being special, about it losing its special spark?
No. Have you?
Oh, maybe we should have, we perhaps are too naive. We have done what great executives throughout history have done. We've really surrounded ourselves with wonderful, wonderful staff, loving, dedicated, talented people, and used their individual talent, which made camp very, very special and fairly successful, in our opinion.
Lou was saying yesterday, when we were watching everything taking place, you know, and it was all going really well. And he says, remember when we used to do this all ourselves? How did we do it?
Yeah, in some years, Jan was even the camp nurse. You know,
Right.
We did everything. Of course, in the starting years, our camp wasn't 200 plus people. First camp was about 28 people, and then it got to 30, and then started growing very rapidly. So we had the opportunity to practice, and if we had a problem with 35, 40 people, it was easy to change the program.
Okay, what I'm thinking with that is, every once in a while, I don't know if those of you here have run into this, but I'll be explaining to somebody about our camp, somebody doesn't know about it. And it takes a long, long time to do that, because so much of our camp is based on spontaneity, and if I can call it planned spontaneity. Move on a little bit. Can you think of a time where, you know, a lot of times when the trees ruffle or a rainbow comes out down the waterfront the other day, we kind of stand back and move on a little bit. Is there one particular time that stands out in your mind where you felt God's presence at camp?
There are many times. I guess the one most spectacular to me, it was all inspiring, but in a very different way than some of the rustling of the trees and that type of gentle presence of God feeling, was the time in which, I don't know if you were here, Jim, the year that we all heard, not all of us heard, but most of us heard this terrible freight train or whatever it was roaring down off the hill during communion. And were you here? You heard it. Not everyone did, you know. It was the loudest noise. It was terrifying. I thought that something had, I don't know what it was, a runaway truck.
It wasn't a runaway truck or a freight train, it was a wind.
I don't know what it was. I don't think it was the wind per se exactly. It was a rush of something.
Are you trying to tell, oh, excuse me.
I don't know what it was. Does anybody know what it was?
Perhaps not, I guess I thought it was the wind. But what is kind of interesting is that happened during communion. And we were recording communion as we are recording this session now. And the next day when we played back the videotape, this noise that most of us heard was not on tape. But I think as camp gets larger and larger, and more people, and larger staff, and more responsibilities, and today with all the problem with liability, that we worry more about running camp, planning camp, and we don't get an opportunity to experience some of the spiritual things that we did years ago. Is that true?
I don't know. I think about that.
Okay, well, 35 years, I just follow my wife's direction. And camp, pretty good.
Okay. Frequently, I hear the phrase down here, to let go and let God, and that's what made me think of that question as far as instances where we felt God's presence. I want to keep coming back to the audience, especially the year was 1990. It's hard for us now to grasp the camp, I think, was 45 years ago, and I'm not sure if it's always been this way, but our camp presently is interfaith, interracial. We have different religious backgrounds here, we have different different racial backgrounds, which today almost seems like a big deal. Was it a big deal 35 years ago? To have different religious groups here, to have different mixing of races?
It was, we didn't have an interracial camp for probably the first 10 years, maybe?
If you say so.
Something like that, I would guess. I don't really know. And I remember the first time when we felt that it was absolutely essential that the camp be integrated. And yet we were fearful at the same time that we would lose a lot of our regular people. Didn't happen. But when those first couple of summers, when the parents would come down, it was just so, I mean, things were so different then. There really wasn't a mixing of the races at all, hardly. And you would see these concerned looks on the parents' faces. Not just the white faces, but even more especially the black parents' faces. They were very concerned about leaving their children for the week. And they would stay, and stay,
Yes.
and stay.
And it would be, some would be going down and they would still be very reluctant to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to put that again into context, the other day, I noticed, with campers coming in, I asked campers, where are you from? And it was so common years ago that when you ask anybody who was black where you're from, they said Second Community Church, downtown.
Right.
And now they're from all over. Okay? I grew up in Indiana. The first black person I met was a church camp. The first Jew I met was a church camp. Okay, and now I don't lose track of it, but when I put it back in that time frame, it does seem like we were breaking new ground.
Yeah.
So look at the religious faiths. How do we accommodate so many different, I remember one year we had 40 churches represented here.
Well, we probably do this year. Very, very likely. No, probably not. You know why? Because I see, again, going the other way. For a while, everybody was joining churches.
Mm-hmm.
And now I see many of the kids with no church affiliation at all.
Okay. We're moving in a different direction. My adult years, it hits home with me. And again, with you folks that are younger, it's hard to think about it until I think you get older. But that deals with the sacrifice that you've made over the years to put the camp together. Each year, I don't know if it would be that difficult to put the camp together in the beginning, but to each year, without fail, without question, keep coming back. What kind of sacrifices has that involved? I seem to remember in '73, Boonie turned down a promotion to go somewhere, and that there was a speculation that we may not have camp or something. Was that rumor, or was there something to that?
I think there was something to that.
You know, first of all, you should know that we tell everybody, including corporate America, that the most important thing in our lives, other than our family, is the church camp. And I'm not sure, even though we work hundreds and hundreds of hours, to rephrase that, Jan works hundreds and hundreds of hours, that I've never thought about it as a sacrifice.
I haven't either. And it really wasn't until, well, I always knew that I was working like crazy. But then when I started the Summer Theater, and realized how much I did. I just couldn't do it all. And now Karen took over a lot of the last 2 years for me. And then this year, when Karen moved into the kitchen area of her main focus, Tina Brizius took over many of the clerical, organizational things that I always did, previously.
And did a better job in one areas because
You bet.
we did not have the expertise, the ability, and the smarts to get other people involved. We just did everything ourselves. And Tina has gotten 30 or 40 more people involved in running camp, and it's been really nice this year. I enjoyed it.
The next question, I think you've already answered it, is aside from during the week, how has camp enriched your lives?
It's been the most important thing in my life, except for my kids and Boonie, period.
Well, as you know, I have no formal education, and yet I have a fairly responsible job with corporate America. And the church camp has trained me, even though I lose my voice every year on about Wednesday, the church camp has trained me to do what I do for a living. I'm a professional meeting planner. I plan meetings all over the world now. And the experience putting together this church camp for 35 years has helped me. Has given me the only training I've had for that job. I'm also, believe it or not, a professional speaker. And when I found out I had to speak at any day, at any moment of that day, for any length of time, on any subject, and I was able to do it, that was what gave me the confidence to go out and be a speaker.
Okay, all right. Is the,
And also, if I can interrupt, you may not believe this at this stage, but when we took over the youth group and the camp, I was so shy, I mean painfully shy, that I couldn't do anything. I was paralyzed, I was so shy. And
look at her now, right? If I may, Jim. Reverend John Selby was the minister of the Gehenna Community Church when we started the club. And he was the one that said, hey, we can do it, and we did it.
And we made lots of mistakes, and he let us make them.
And then we started getting so many other people involved. As you know, our staff has come for many years from California, from Florida, New York, Wisconsin, Missouri. People who pay their own way, take their own week off for vacations. We have people who graduate from college who tell their new employer, I'll take the job only if the first full week of August I can get off. And usually the bosses are so shocked to hear that, they say, okay.
I think Robin Brad's one was more interesting examples I heard this year was Boonie talking to the executives at Anheuser-Busch and getting Robin off the hook.
That worked really well. I was speaking there in St. Louis for a national convention and missed every opportunity to see the person that I had to for Robin. And then at the thank you luncheon that they had at the convention, I was seated at the table, and every table had a head person, and seated next to me was Robin's boss. Who was hosting at that table, so it all worked out.
So you started pulling golf balls out of his ears and
Well, I sold pretty hard.
I'm here.
Do you think, I don't even have a question, I just want to follow up. It's just a realization, though, our society, at the start of the program, changes so much, and something we're into now in our culture is lawsuit fever. Okay, and to run a camp like this is a major liability. I mean, there's a lot of responsibility. I don't want to speculate on something, but if one of you would be hurt seriously here, somebody would be held responsible. It is a lot of responsibility that goes here. I think I take it for granted, we all, I think, take it for granted, but the buck stops with these folks. Move on a little bit. This is kind of a visionary question, but 35 years from now, the year will be 2025. Do you see us still doing this?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that there will be a spiritually centered group meeting yearly that will have some relationship to staff and staff's children, because it's been going on for 2,000 years now, and it's going to continue.
Okay, again, that's quite a ways down the road, but it doesn't seem that long ago that it was 1980 when we had the 25th anniversary, and here's the 35th. And in fact, I know a lot of us here aren't even that excited about celebrating the 35th because we're so busy doing camp. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was not sure that I even wanted to have anything at all, because things like this tend to get in the way of camp. And I was real careful to ask everybody involved if they really thought that we should do it, because I didn't want to spoil camp for the kids this year, for the kid that's here for the first year, you know?
And the audience tonight, it's late at night, and they're so interested in there, they're looking, they're smiling, and we love these young ladies and gentlemen, shouldn't call them kids for heaven's sakes, we love these young ladies and gentlemen, and they show up at our house all the time, throughout the year, to keep the love going. They usually show up around dinner time, but it's your camp, we do it for you, and we apologize if we're taking time out of your fun.
35 years. Again, to me, it just seems like it's run like clockwork, like everything just seems to fit together. Would you have done anything differently than the way you have? If you could look at your crystal ball 35 years ago and say, well, gee, I think we should have moved this direction, or moved that direction.
Well, of course, as I told you, we've made lots of mistakes, and we're still making mistakes. But
She is, at least.
I probably made, well, we both made mistakes, I guess. But I don't think you could ever look back on things and say, we should have done it this way. That it's not possible to do it.
You know, Jan, most people don't believe us when we say this, but the direction we have had for this camp has come from someone above us, and we're just merely a puppet. God is pulling the strings and putting the words in our mouths. So what we're doing is serving Him, and for that reason, I think we're doing it fairly well, because it's His ideas and His philosophy, His direction, not ours.
Okay. And the needs we address here, I think, obviously, are pertinent. I mean, it's addressing a void that needs to be filled. I want to go back to a question I asked earlier, perhaps phrase it in a different way. The kids here today, I don't think we had anybody's parents here as campers. That's happened before, I know. But certainly their parents' age group was here. I have been struck in the last 5 years with kids talking about suicide, with kids talking about using hard drugs, life-threatening drugs. I don't remember our age group doing that sort of thing. I mean, facing those kinds of issues that put us up against the wall that way. Do these kids, are they growing up in a tougher world than their parents, or is it all the same?
I don't know. I think it's a little bit more in the open now than it was. We did have a camper commit suicide, if you remember. I remember several others who talked about it. But we do open things up more now. It's always, this is a tough place to live here, you know? We have lots of things come our way, and it's all the way we handle it. That's what we're here for, see how we can handle it.
And Jim, if there's one problem with our camp, is that it's not the real world. The people that come here for 1 week are separated from many of the problems. It's a utopia, I shouldn't say it that way, but it is. And it's difficult for some to go back into the real world.
It's difficult for me. I was telling Brian DeCarlo today, many times when I go home, I'm almost sick at my stomach. And some of the kids used to have such trouble adjusting, and that's why we started Camp Sunday. Because it became sort of a halfway house, if you will, between camp and tough, cruel world outside, and a way to kind of ease your way back in.
You know, I've seen here it's okay to cry, here it's okay to hug, here it's okay to tell anybody all your
Yeah, I can remember instances, where we would see really, almost like you would think you had to make it up, to see strange reactions between, or interchanges between parents and children, and not the slant parents, for that matter.
Some of the parents try so hard to understand, it's really great. It's really, really great.
Would you say, speaking of parents, I know you've shared some of these with me over the years as they happen, can you think of any particular, one of the more comical phone calls, comments, or questions you've gotten from a parent over the years?
Oh, I don't remember a comical question per se, but I remember one parent who kept me on the line for 2 hours with nothing but one question after the other, after the other, after the other about this camp, and was her daughter going to be safe, and wasn't. So for 2 hours.
You know, some camps may be a little different than ours, and some parents probably should have some concern. Many parents would say, all right, kid, you're going to camp, and they know nothing about our camp. And some parents are so worried that we have such a high percentage of our campers come back.
And it's basically word of mouth that brings you kids here.
I bet you half the people here today have come because a friend that asked them to come rather than an advertisement. I'm sure it is.
And I was talking to one of the Lewis kids today, and they were saying that they're related to 4 other families, cousins here, 4 different families. Is that what you said? 5 different families, cousins. And 5 different families that are here. And the same thing with the King family, and with, of course, the boats and the overrockers, and that's interlocked now with the Caswells. And it is bizarre when you start to think of all the people that are related at this camp.
And in a few years, my grandson's going to marry one of the babies out there.
Yeah, which is, we should throw in that we have had marriages as a result from meetings that occur. I find out a lot too. I ask kids where they come from, or how do you hear about our camp? And I wish I could find the guy today at lunch and said, I don't know, oh, here he is, he's over here. He said, you were sitting next to me, he goes, I don't know, we were going to go to Kings Island or something, and we just showed up here. But most of the kids here, I'll find, I know somebody, my cousin, my neighbor, that sort of thing. Anyway, we need to take a station break, and basically a brief pizza break, and we'll come right back, and we'll open up to questions from the audience. We'll touch on, then we're going to open up to questions from our viewing audience. Janny. Tell us about camp themes. Where do they come from?
Here comes a folksy story, folks, I'm sure of it.
What was our first camp theme?
Brotherhood of Man.
Brotherhood of Man.
First one.
Okay, that was the first year that we had the black campers with us. So that was what year, Don?
65.
65. So I was right, it was almost 10, it was about 10 camps later. And it seemed appropriate. I've been hearing that other camps have a theme, and I think Jenny Selby urged us to have that theme, and she picked that theme that year. And then after that, I think I picked the themes from then on. Did not have one that I wrote a theme song for until several years later.
Okay. Has the purpose of the theme changed over the years, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. I like for the theme to be a I can do thing, an action thing, as opposed to the Brotherhood of Man. The Brotherhood of Man is a thing. You understand what I'm saying? Get with it is, I can do that. I cannot make the Brotherhood of Man. I can only make me be a brother to you, you know. But I can't make the Brotherhood of Man. I don't think it's a good thing, because one person can't do it. The theme should be something that one person can do.
Like, I have made a difference today,
Like, have I made a difference today?
or be kind.
Okay, all right. Again, it's one of those things I take for granted. I don't think about why do we have a theme. It's just there.
Well, and I think the theme has been a big benefit to our camp. And I'm very proud of my wife. She writes great songs.
They're
And,
good theme songs. They're not great songs, but they are good theme songs.
you know, we try to sell them a couple times and no one wants them, but for camp, boy, they're great.
We never tried to sell them.
IRS.
Moving on. This is my favorite. This question I'm going to ask was the brainchild of what we're doing right now. This is the question I've been pondering for years. Try this one. Boonie is a salesman. Robin Bragg works in marketing for Anheuser-Busch. I'm a college professor. Funzie is an insurance salesman. Tom Skinner, a naval officer. Janny Boonie Brizius, your son is a fireman. Bob Bode is an accountant. My sister Betsy is a hygienist. Flash is a salesman. We have, around here, we have some different occupations. Paul Morgan works for electric company. I know I'm missing people, but basically what I'm getting at is we have so many different backgrounds on the staff. I can't think of any group that gets together like this with so many backgrounds represented and so much potential for misunderstanding. But yet I have the impression that we leave on a Saturday when camp ends, and we pick up 51 weeks later on the Saturday. We don't even go through formalities like, how was your year? We say, I need help moving this bunk over here. Okay, which is very unusual. I can't think of anything that matches up with that. I want to carry this a little bit further. My big question is, what do you think brings us together once a week? And heavens knows there are good things that can keep us apart. But what do you think is the core, what is the magnet that draws us from all over the country to come together 1 week a year, campers and staff for that matter?
I don't know.
Of course, camp has perhaps given each of you a confidence. I can do a type of theme, so that whatever your interests have been, you've been able to go out and do it. You as an individual, each of you, staff, campers, have found something at camp that I perhaps don't even know what it is, but it's your special thing, and it's what brings you back to rekindle that, to look for it again. Sometimes you'll find that special spiritual experience a second time, but you keep coming back looking for it. I don't know.
I think that we're all kind of part of a whole, though. Like I talked about last night, we're all these little separate entities that are all a part of camp. Now, there are some of us that are here that I miss. I miss Forrest being here. And I miss Wesley being here. You know, there's certain parts of us, when they're not here with us, that I feel like part of our family's not here. And Wesley will always be here, and Forrest will always be here, whether they ever come again. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And just to interject along with that, oftentimes in companies, organizations, the more years you've been somewhere somehow correlates with power or influence on the organization. Down here, we have people that show up, and literally within 2 days, they've taken the place over.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an equal footing type of thing, I think, in many respects, that we don't find that often elsewhere. Any other thoughts on that before we move on? That really does bother me. I can't, I've never come to terms with that, what brings us all together.
Well, don't know. I guess I believe that we're all part of a master plan, and I'm just delighted that God's plan is to have you people here with us.
Speaking of you people, we have about 10 minutes. I want to open the floor up for questions. And, well, anything goes. First question.
I know what's for breakfast.
No, I can figure out what's for breakfast. Being here, I was trying to count the other day, and I haven't always been here every year, but I feel like I've been associated with the program now. This would actually be 25 years, 25 camps. And to me, you are my family. I mean, you are my second set of parents, and in some cases, more so than my mother and stepfather have been. And many times I came to you first when I couldn't go to them with things. So I feel like I'm a part of that. I think an answer maybe to Jim's question that we are family. That it's like a family that goes off and does their own lives and their own things, but they keep coming back because they need to have that feeling of belonging to the family.
And when you were here, you were still here, weren't you?
Yes, absolutely.
And when you weren't here, you were still here, weren't you, Robert?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the question I have is, knowing that when I first came down in 1966, that there was Carol and David and Barbie and Becca on the way, how has camp changed, how do you think camp has changed their lives, and now in turn their children's lives? And are you pleased with that change, and you think that along, and I'm sure you do along with the rest of us, that their lives have been enriched by that, and a little bit about how you feel that has happened and what's happened in their lives?
I feel very, very blessed that our kids were able to grow up within this camp family. By the same token, as all of you who have ever had a girlfriend or a wife or a husband who did not grow up with it, it is very hard for understand it. Luke has a real legitimate job this week, but quite frankly, he's happy that he has the job this week. It's not that he doesn't like camp. Exactly. It's just not his thing, you know? Bill, while he almost always shows up, Carol's husband, he doesn't stay either. And Becca's husband is busy working for me this week, which is a real legitimate thing, and I really need him to be there working. But quite frankly, he's probably just as happy not to be here too. And Tina, who is now running the camp in many beginning years, was quite frankly here because she had to be. And I know that our family's a very close family. Our personal family's a very close family. And that's a hard thing to break into. And the Camp family is a very close-knit thing also, and that's a hard thing to break into. Now, I understand that. I don't know what to do about it. I really don't.
Jim, let me ask one more thing in conjunction with that. Quick.
Okay, I'll be quick. Do you feel like their lives at camp have been doubly, triply hard because of being your children, as opposed to the rest of us being able to come in and be just ourselves? They had this image, this thing that they had to live up to because of that.
I expect so. You probably have to ask them, but I expect that was the case.
I think it was probably easier for them to become staff than it was for them to be campers.
Right.
And by the way, they're tougher staff than we were. Whatever I'm trying to say.
Next question.
If you were asked by someone getting ready to start a camp, what advice would you give them? And what should they rely on to get the camp started and running?
You know, it's an excellent question. For 20 years, maybe 25, we have said we should write a book on how to start a camp. We agree finally? Should write a book. You find my on your book.
Yes, we have.
But it's difficult to put in paper. I don't know. You see, if I was as smart as I thought I was, we didn't know anything. We just did it. You know, we didn't have time. You started mentioning how much time it took. We put the first camp together in a matter of 6 weeks, and here we were, and it worked out pretty well. And we said, well, we should change a few things, and we changed a few things. But the key to a camp is staff and campers and program and flexibility and love and food and well, you know, it just all goes together when you get the right kind of direction from God, and I think we have had. It goes together. We're not gifted people. I'm delighted we have 35 years of camping, but I'm not sure I know how I did it. I just know that it's been done. Not a very good answer, I'm sorry.
Next question.
I find you both very hard to thank. You guys are not easy to thank. I would like to know what ways we could thank you as staff and as campers, and what would make you feel, what could we do to thank you? Very difficult to reach and to thank.
Well, I don't worry things. We've gotten back way more than we ever gave.
As a matter of fact, when I was a volunteer fireman, as well as running a church camp, we probably got more back then. Don't get quite as much back now, because I'm not doing as much for other people. Your hugs, your love, your cards and letters, your positive attitude that I'll be back next year no matter what the problem is. I'll be here, I'll do the job, I'll accept the responsibility, whatever it is. That's plenty of thanks.
Next.
You have to assert yourself there, Cam, we don't worry about it.
Just come on over.
I was just personally wondering, how many different sites has the camp been at?
The first camp was at Camp Akita, but it was just there 1 year. And then we went to Camp Indian Village, which is up on by Ridge Dam along the side of the river. And it was a really neat camp. It was really scummy when we were there. I mean, it was bad. We had to go in and scrape the yuck and the dirt off of everything. But had been a really nice camp. And then we were there for 2 years, and then we went back to Camp Akita. We were there for 10, I believe. And then we moved to Camp Indianola, and I think we were there another 10.
And when we moved in, a lot of people said, oh my gosh, no one will ever come.
No one will ever come again. And they said the same thing when we moved here, which was about another 10 years. And we've been here for how many? 12 how many?
20.
We've been here 20 years?
1970 was the first.
At Tar Hollow?
It's 21.
My word.
We don't need Indianola 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 more than
Yeah, that's
Indianola?
very long.
Yes, dear, I think you made a mistake.
Okay.
All right, okay. Don't keep track of this stuff. I'm sorry.
No, figures don't mean anything to us.
Any other questions?
How did you come up with the idea to have the campers write a letter to themselves at the end of the week?
That was Reverend Self's idea.
Yes. John has not been affiliated with his camp for 15, 20 years, 15, 16 years maybe, and yet everything I do, I probably have hitchhiked the idea from John Selby. He was a minister that married us 36 years ago, and he's a minister that has baptized all of our children, married all of our children. Has been such an important part to the Brizius family, and like I say, allowed us to run a camp a little differently than other camps. I now talk about one of my mentors at Walt Disney. But I do know that we have a great success story, what kids have done through camp and out through their lives.
Other questions? Fine.
Janny, I just from hearing your comment earlier, I too remember first time I came from being just very, very shy. And I remember some experiences with Paul Morgan, for instance, kind of jokes around the breaking out of my shell in the early days, and some other experiences that happened just to kind of maybe less introverted and kind of coming out. Do you recall any experiences yourself as you started along that lines?
It all just kind of blends together so much in my mind, I don't know if I can. It was culmination of having to do these things. It wasn't anybody else to do it, because it was Reverend Selby and Boonie and me. And we did it all.
Planned the menu, bought the food, planned the program, ran the program.
Bought all the crafts, did all the crafts. You know, everything that all of you people did. Did the hiking, you know. I led them on a wild goose chase once. I was lost.
I was the camp lifeguard for 15 years, you know.
I almost drowned.
Well, it's true. One day at Camp Akita, I did 14 reaching rescues during the swim tests. 14. And one I didn't grab, I had to go way down and pick her up.
She came back for our 25th reunion.
I think we have time for one last,
Maybe a problem.
No, I was just wondering what would you think is the scariest moment as far as camper situation you've had over the years?
Oh, I know. It was the night that I thought Karen was dying of asthma in my arms. There was no doubt about, not Karen Abram, Karen a camper. And I really thought she had died in my arms.
You're about an hour away from any type of help.
Yeah, that was the scariest that I ever had.
And one of the others is when we left this camp about 10 years ago, at the edge of the camp on the highway, there was a 4 or 5 car crash.
And all of our people had just left. None of them were in the crash.
But we jumped out. In fact, for a second, we probably said, oh, I'm glad it's not our kids. And didn't even worry about the people hurt. Then we realized that we should.
Be concerned about everybody.
But the other problem, you know, we have a huge problem, we think, and the next year we just laugh about that problem.
I apologize to our affiliates for running over. One last question, this is a nightline. One last question before we wind up. Do you have anything, Bill? Come on. One more, and then we have some clothes.
Now, I want to say something, if I may, please ask a question, and make it easy.
All right, it's kind of a lighter question. As Jim was saying earlier, you've got a professor, college professor of sales, marketing, insurance, electric companies, everything. Before, now that's where they are. But you saw them as kids, when they were campers and younger, and that's when they got together. Jim brought up the question as of why are they all, what brings so many different, diverse types of people to this place. So, and what you see now, the kids you see now, what type of prospects do you see coming out? I feel most all the counselors here are very, very well off as far as their lives go, and none of them are really having a hard time that we know of. So what do you see coming out of the campers coming up today? Do you feel they'll be as successful as the last wave, or will they have a harder time to go?
They want to be, they will be.
Ooh, that's very tough. But I put my life in the hands of these kids. I think they're great, and if they want to be, they can be and will be. They're great. If I may, before we close, I don't know how many years ago Karen Ingram got involved in our camping program.
Almost from the beginning.
Yes.
Right.
And over the last 10 years, as our lives got complicated, at age 50, we started 3 businesses. And we probably could not have a camp today if it hadn't been for the hard work of Karen Ingram, for the hard work of so many people out in the audience today, people who we truly call family and truly love and truly cry together, come together, and I don't know what it is, but our family is unique. Thank you very much.
Janny, any closing thoughts?
Well, it all was kind of summed up tonight when Bill came in and told me that he got his orders to go to Saudi Arabia. And it just hit me, and I thought, my God, he's just like one of my kids, you know? God bless you.
Janny Boonie, we're here tonight not so much to honor who you are, but what you've done. I can't think of a better way to close this session than perhaps to sing Kumbaya. And before, that will be our closing. And before we sing Kumbaya, I'd like to offer words thought from my favorite magician, and that is that God loves you, and so do we.
Thanks, everybody. You'll see tomorrow when I hit you with a water balloon. You will not touch us.
We need some seniors to, some of you that are still awake and going still, to help sweep up, clean it up a little bit.
Still 7:30 getting up?
No.
Yes.
It's new.
Tell you what, we will take an hour out for lunch, and I'll have lunch, and that way you don't have to catch up.
Hey, 2 hour rest period. Just take a 2 hour rest period tomorrow. We've done it before in the middle of the week.
Hey, tell you, we'll see your trip tomorrow.
We're okay.
Well, that's the way that, I bet you most of you go to bed every night at 9 o'clock anyway.
Most of us do.
You've never seen Johnny Carson and other
Seniors,
people.
hang on just a second. I need one cabin to do the kitchen. A cabin.
One cabin.
We got a volunteer, please.
Cabin 5 will do the kitchen. Led by their council.
Certainly we'll do it.
Yeah. I'll help.
Okay, seniors, Listen up a second.
You said, fine, we'll do it.
Tomorrow morning, after second class, when that ends, 11:20,
You said the
if I remember right, 11:30, we